Hello and welcome to the Ninth Age Fantasy Battles. Today I'm going to take you through the 2022 beta changes for the Empire of Sonnstahl. These are the final changes for the Empire for the year 2022. They're going to be set in gold until the end of the year where these points changes are going to happen again. I'm going to go through the points changes as they are in the second patch. I'm only going to talk about the first patch if they were pertinent to the second patch. Um, but otherwise, I'm not going to go through all the different changes that happened in the first patch. If you're interested in those, please look those up. It's helpful as a play. If you play Empire or as an opponent of, if you are someone who is an enemy of the Empire, then it's also helpful to study your enemy and know what they can do. So, I do have to go through some context and disclaimer. The points changes are across the board, are just to help the low and mid tier armies. I think Empire is it's somewhere in the mid tier, but it's on the low end of the mid tier. So that's why if you see some more significant changes in here, that's why. And just bear in mind that these are the final changes. These are what they're going to be for the rest of 2022 until they mix up the points again at the end of the year. But there still will probably be a hot fix. If you see any errors, just please let a staff member know. So I'm going to jump into the character changes. It's pretty minor changes across the board, pretty much 5 points cheaper for various things. Knight Commander was 180 in 2021, and they're reducing that down to 175 for 2022. I think this slightly offsets the fact that what you generally saw with a lot of armies in 2021 was people were bringing a knight commander and they were bringing a big block of knights, like a knight bus. Well, what they did is they increased the cost of the knights, but now it looks like they're walking back the cost of the knight commander just slightly, which helps offset some of that increase. So you can still play knight buses if you want to with some of these changes. The Marshal was 150 and they brought that down to 140. The horse increases to 55 again because they don't want people necessarily to be playing night buses because that was just seeing in like 90% of Empire lists. Don't quote me on that percentage, I just made that up. And then the Griffin went from 140 to 145. So your Marshal got a little bit cheaper, which helps for the BSB. But if you put them on a mount, some of the mount options got a little more expensive, but still about the same as they were last year. The Prelate's interesting. He was 155, and they brought that down to 150 in the beta 1, and then they brought that down to 145 in beta 2. That's really starting to get pretty cheap. The main thing with the Prelate is you want to bring them for those blessings. Well, two reasons. Most people bring him for the hatred. You can get rerolls the first round of combat, and then two, he can cast the blessings on the unit that he's in. So having Prelates be cheaper across the board is nice. Although they're still more expensive than the Marshal, which is, I don't know, that's a toss-up. You need the Marshals for your discipline, and you need the Prelate for your support characters to buff. All right. Core changes are really the types of things that make me excited. So we've got the Electoral Cav, which, as I said, I think, oh yeah. So they increased some of the cost in the first beta patch. They increased the cost of the nightly orders, and they increased the cost of the cavalry picks. So I did not list that out here because generally people are bringing a big bus of nightly orders with cav picks. But here they're going from 160 base down to a 155 base. So if you're bringing smaller units of electoral cap just for like quick scoring darts, 155, you put a musician in there for 165. You probably want to give them shields or something so they have a 1-up armor save, but it's still only going to be like 170 points or something. Pretty cheap. Then we have light infantry. So light infantry were not touched originally. They were 135 with 13 for additional models. And then they're bringing down the base cost of light infantry down to 130. I think they didn't really want to touch the additional models because most people are bringing light infantry in units of 15 to 20 is the general size. it's pretty rare that you see a unit that's under 15. So if you bring down the base cost, it helps. Maybe you think twice about maybe wanting to bring 2 units of 10 instead of a unit of 20. Because now the cost is getting pretty similar. Then you have state militia. So they were 135 with 7 for additional models. They originally just brought the additional model cost down for the state militia, and now they're bringing the base cost down to 130 as well. I think this just makes things a little bit more in line with light infantry, though they have similar rules but slightly different. Militia are a little bit more used for chaffing, light infantry for scoring and range damage. Uh, and here's the thing that really excites me as an Empire player. You've got heavy infantry with the base cost of 145 with 8 points for additional models. They didn't touch them at all originally, but now they brought their base cost down to 140. Mind you, these heavy infantry start in units of 20. So that's 20 guys for 140 points, and now additional models for 7 points. I think spears and halberds are additional points, but it's pretty minor. So that additional point cost helps out because you might see, let's see, you start with units of 20, so your base cost is down 5. Generally, you're going to see like 2 or 3 units of heavy infantry, so you save 15 points there. And then you'll see usually at least 1 unit of 40, so you save another 20 points there. And now suddenly you've got yourself 35, 40 points cheaper, plus the light infantry are cheaper, so that's 50 points. And then you just saved yourself 50 points in core, which is enough for a rending banner or a speed banner or some additional models. So, pretty nice. Special changes. So, they've been playing around a lot with arcane engine costs. I didn't list it out, but the big thing that happened in the first beta patch was that arcane engines were reduced in cost as mounts for wizards. Um, they did bring down the base cost of the Arcane Engine down to 260 as well in the first beta patch, and now they're bringing that down even further to 255. As a buffing chariot, uh, I really enjoy Arcane Engines, so that's decent there. The Arcane Shield they've been playing with because that provides distracting. So they did increase that cost from 15 to 20 in the first patch, but um, they brought the Arcane Engine itself down 15 points, so it's still 10 points cheaper than it was in the past. They're mostly doing this because generally when you see Arcane Engines, they are seen as mounts. They're not seen naked because you can't protect them as well. You can't give them any upgrades unless they're a mount. So all right, and then this one is probably going to cause a little bit of a splash in the Empire Army world as well. In addition to the heavy infantry discount, they gave Imperial Guard a discount. So they start at 175 for 15 and had additional point cost of 17. They're now bringing down the base cost down to 170. And here's the really juicy thing. The great weapons were 3 points in 2021, and now they're only 2 points. So you can get Imperial Guard guys with great weapons now for 19 points instead of having hand weapon and shield. A lot of people still use the hand weapon and shield, but there's been some talk about, the value. I think now that great weapons are 19 points for additional models, really helps even that out. And we're probably going to see a lot more great weapon units than parry units. At least that's my prediction. Knights of the Sun Griffin have been getting some sizable discounts. They were 280 for 3. I think they started for 3. With 75 for additional models. They brought that additional model cost down to 60, and now they're actually bringing down the base cost to 275 in the second beta patch, and the additional models down to 59. So a unit of 6 is now going to cost you 5 points cheaper, and then 16 points cheaper times 3 is 48, plus 5 is 53 points cheaper for a unit of 6 than it did in 2021. And then I just put Imperial Auxiliaries, Armory, and Fury, as soon as Fury together. So the riders, which are mostly used as chaff, they're 155 the base cost and 23 for additional models. What they did was originally, because they're chaff and and in a lot of armies they have also been increasing the cost of chaff, they increased that to 160, and with additional models points going down to 22, because some people are using them in units of 10. And so even though they increase the base cost, if you bring down the additional points, then if you bring units of 10, they cost the same. Well, now they're walking that back, and riders are still going to be 155 for 2022. You can still use them as chaff, but if you want to bring a unit of 10, they're now slightly cheaper because their additional points costs. They're 1 point cheaper. Plus, if you give them repeater guns, which is usually how you see them in units of 10, those are also 1 point cheaper. So you're saving 2 points per model, which is 10 points cheaper, but it helps. All right, artillery. From what I could tell, they're just smoothing out the discrepancy. So artillery are 160, and then you give them upgrades to make them a more formal weapon. So for a while, so Imperial Rocketeers, it was zero cost. They just cost 160 basically. Then they brought out something interesting in the first patch, which they made them -5. Um, Now they're making artillery just cost 155, but they get rid of that -5 for Rocketeers because it's weird to subtract points in your list if you bring something. It's like if you bring a wizard, subtract 20 points, like it makes your list cheaper. That's not really how it works. Everything has a cost. So they're just making artillery across the board cheaper for 155, 5 points cheaper. And then the rocket is just going to be that base value of 155. Mortars were originally decreased from 30 down to 25. So now that they're bringing the base cost of artillery down, mortars are now 10 points cheaper than what they were. One of my favorite artillery weapons. And flagellants, the zealous boys themselves, they were 216 points for additional models. They brought that down to 15 for additional models, and so if you bring bigger units, and now they're bringing down the base cost down to 195 for 5 guys. So this is, so it's actually, where's the Imperial Guard? Yeah, so Imperial Guard are cheaper for the first 15 than flagellants, but flagellants are now 4 points cheaper per model than Imperial Guard are for additional models. So if you have a unit of 30, I'm trying to do the math in my head. So let's figure this out. 15 flagellants for 195 and 15 Imperial Guard. So you're paying 25 more points for the flagellants at the base cost. But now you're saving 4 points per model for an additional 15, which is 60 points, and then minus the 25. So you're looking at 35 points cheaper for a unit of 30 than Imperial Guard. So anyway, let me know what you think about these changes. Do any of these changes make you more excited to play Empire? Do any of these changes make you less excited to play Empire? Personally, like I've pointed out, I'm really excited about the heavy infantry change, the Imperial Guard change, the artillery changes, and the flagellant changes. Character changes don't really do much to excite me, but maybe you love that your characters are just 5 points cheaper across the board, because with Empire, you generally are bringing like 4 or 5 characters. So I guess 1 or 2 of those are going to be wizard, but probably going to bring like 3 of those characters. So now you save yourself 15 points, which is nice. And that's all I have. So let me know what you think. Hope that you enjoy playing with your Empire or enjoy playing against them in 2022.